everyone. I'll kind of get us started until we get to number 4. We have the election of a chairperson, and then that person can kind of take over for the rest of the agenda. So I'd like to call this budget hearing and annual meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we would talk about the method of voting. We can just do it by hand raising. As a reminder, this is a community meeting, so any motions and voting will include all people that live in the district community. So we can just do a hand raising, and Karita just has to be able to count for that, or if people have another suggestion, we could do a paper ballot or something else. So any thoughts on that?
I move to do a raise of hands.
I second.
Okay, are we okay with that? I guess I should say all in favor because we're hand raising. Anyone opposed? All right, and now I would look for a nomination for the election of a chairperson.
I'll nominate Al Sonde.
A second.
So Al Sonte, nominated by Cedric, seconded by Chrissy. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, congratulations, Al.
All right, the next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
I
Make
so moved.
Motion by Sue, second by
Rick Vandermolen.
Rick. Vandermolen. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Jenny, you got a presentation of the budget.
So all of you should have a budget book, or there are some in the back, and it's all listed, started on page 7 and 8 in your budget book, and I'll let Sue kind of talk through that.
And actually, when I numbered, I skipped the first 2, so it's actually page 5.
Okay. Well, I suppose that
You've got, yeah. So looking ahead to the 21-22 budget, we are estimating that we will have a balanced budget on June 30th, 2022, based on revenues totaling $13,641,556 and expenditures of the same amount. And that's our Fund 10 budget. Looking down through this document, the next item is the Special Projects Fund, Funds 21 and 23. You'll notice that the fund balance has increased significantly since the last year. That was due to the fact that the Government Accounting Board required school districts to move their student activity funds from Fund 60 to Fund 21. So now we have to account for those there, and we have revenues, expenses, and a fund balance there. You'll see later on the next page, Fund 60 will show 0 for the year. Fund 27 is our special education fund. There is no fund balance in special education. The revenues and expenses at the end of the year must equal and not show a balance. Debt service, Fund 38 and 39. We no longer have Fund 38 debt. We are only dealing with Fund 39. Fund 38 was non-referendum debt. We right now only have referendum debt, and it's the debt on the elementary school. You can see the fund balance increases a little bit. When we budget for Fund 39, we have to budget the revenue in a calendar year and the expenses in a fiscal year, because we pay in September and March. And in the September payment, we have to budget for that with tax dollars now in January. So that's why we budget the revenue a little more to cover that September payment. Next is the Capital Projects Fund, Fund 46. You will see our fund balance there is $2.2 million. We have been consistently adding to that each year. We are now at a point where we can start to spend from that. We've exhausted our 5-year limitation. So now we will see expenses, capital expenses coming out of Fund 10 and going through Fund 46. Food Service Fund, Fund 50, again, estimating a balanced budget with revenue and expense. Fund 60 is 0 because we moved that to 21. Fund 72 and 73. Fund 72 is our scholarship account, and those accounts, the beginning of the year last year, were moved to the Chippewa County Foundation. They manage those funds for us. The money that you see here, the ending fund balance of $600,452.07, that's our Fund 73, our post-employment money that we have in a trust for those employees who we still have OPEB obligations for. As of our last actuarial, which was just done now on June 30th, this fund is fully funded. We do not need to add $80 to that account any longer. And then again, Fund 80, our Community Service Fund. I'm estimating this year that we are going to expand this for some community education. So you'll see the expenditures are higher than the revenue. The revenue is generated through tax dollars, so the fund balance will come down a little bit there. Total budgeted expenditures for all funds except 27, 60, 72, and 73 is $15,047,459. This is a 33.4% decrease from the last year. And the largest part of that decrease is because last year in Fund 39 we refinanced. So we showed a major expense there that shows up as you look through the audit or the unaudited 2021, you'll see Fund 39 has a large revenue and expense. Brings us to our proposed property tax levy for 21-22. For our general fund, $3,869,000. Let me start over. $3,869,094. Debt service, $817,034. Community service, $8,290. For a total school levy of $4,694,418. The decrease from the total levy from last year is 6.31%, and which then our proposed mill rate is 10.42%, which is down from 12.01% last year. Any questions?
Next up is the President's Report. I just have a few things I'm going to comment on. I don't know if you guys have all been in the few of the things we did last year. We upgraded the gym. It looks pretty awesome. New scoreboard, bleachers, they redid the floor, and they redid the bathrooms out here in the commons area. One of the big sticker shock items for me was the new heating and AC that was put in out there that no one will ever see. It'll sit outside, but it was very expensive. Some of the other things we did last year, we increased some salaries for a lot of the staff, just to make sure we remain competitive out there. As you know, everyone knows it's pretty hard to keep people these days and get employees. As an example, I look at our secretary's salary, and it's not just schools. You got to compete against all the businesses and companies out there to retain people like that. So we kind of increased salaries in quite a few places, almost across the board with staff. Basically just trying to make sure we retain the good people that we have here. One thing we have in the works right now is a facilities request for proposal plan. It's a 25-year plan that we're looking for. I think Ms. Stark said we have like 10 different architectural companies that are interested in giving us a proposal for that. So in the next couple months, we'll be deciding which company we're going to go with for that. It's a good, I mean, things like the gym upgrade, it was kind of expensive, but I think the prior board members and years past, they did a great job of planning ahead. So, you know, something like that doesn't have to go to referendum, and we can use Fund 46 and for those future items. And that's kind of what that 25-year plan is for. So we can maintain the building, keep progressing forward, keep up with any upkeep, and improve the school. A couple of items we're still working on that we're, a lot of the technology items right now it's a big struggle. Obviously we went virtual, everyone had their Chromebooks. Our community is not very well equipped with high-speed internet around, so a lot of live streaming stuff was very difficult for a lot of our families. And right now, even getting new Chromebooks for ones that were broken or damaged, even chargers, we've got stuff that's been ordered 6 months ago that we still haven't got. It's still on back order. So that's one of the things that it's just a struggle for, I would assume, all schools around and anyone dealing with that kind of mass technology out there. And that's about all I've got. Next up is the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Some of this, just for some of you that have attended a lot of prior meetings on the strategic plan and some of those pieces, it might seem like review, but I still think it's important that we kind of get a big picture of kind of where we're at, where we're going. Just a reminder, the vision and values in the school district of Cadott, engaging our community, supporting our educators, and ensuring that all students achieve high levels of learning, and the values are respect, responsibility, safety, teamwork. We have some new board members that came on in May of this year. Al's the president, Becca Blanchett, vice president, Chrissy Rowe, treasurer, Donna Alvarado, clerk, Cedric, director, Brad Sonateg, director, Corey Liu, director. Our district leadership team, I'm happy to say it's been stable for a few years, and I think we've got a good, powerful team as we move forward, so just some quick information on that. A little bit of a 101 on public school revenue. So what makes up our public school revenue is different things. One is state equalization aid, and you'll see when I talk about the strategic plan, I talk about trying to capitalize on that aid. How do we find the sweet spot of, because we're a positively aided district, getting what we can from state support while still having responsible expenditures within our district. Then the local tax levy, which is what people will vote on tonight. Categorical aid, which is, there are some special education funds. It's called IDEA. It's for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act that we get because of that category. Or Title I is a categorical aid. It's based on how many students we have, our percent of free and reduced lunch. And then locally generated revenue, that could be gate receipts, any of those kinds of things that kind of fall into that. Just to give you, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it can be a little bit overwhelming. But how do we get to that sort of tax levy amount? And so I want to show you a little bit. This is the revenue limit calculation worksheet. This is a DPI. Some of these are already pre-populated from DPI, and then some we have to enter. So it's kind of a complex formula. A couple of things I want to highlight. So when you think about the revenue limit, so for example, we are fortunate, our levy is not as high, our mill rate will go down to 1042. Some people might think, well, let's bump it up so we can do some more. Right now, we are not able to do that. We're at the revenue limit. We would have to go to a referendum for operations if that's something we felt we needed to do. And that's not something we're looking at this point. Everything is on kind of 3-year rolling averages. So both our expenditures and our memberships, so that's why you see all of these are kind of numbers of students in 18, 19, 20, and then 19, 20, 21. Just something, if you were at the last board meeting when we talked about our September head count, that was around 850. And we're like, wow, this is 832. This is on what they call FTE full-time equivalent. So our 4K students only can count as a 0.6. We're hoping eventually that we could do 5-day-a-week programming and have them count full-time. So as a student, they all count, but when we come to the FTE, each of those only count for a 4.6 of a student, which sounds kind of weird, but that's how the calculations work. So just wanted to explain that piece a little bit. The other thing that people sometimes ask about is the private school vouchers and what's the money that we send to that. So that's right here in this amount, this 139.93. That's something, again, we don't really have control over that. That just comes off the top, going to any private school voucher students that we have attending private schools. And if you see the one below it, the SNSP, that's special needs students, have a voucher. There's an aid deduction for that as well. Just as a reminder, even it was maybe a couple of years ago, there's a lot of talk about having increased support for students with special education needs at the state budget level. Right now, they bumped it up a little bit close to 30%, but our argument has been students in private schools get reimbursed at the 90% level. So we just are asking for some equity. So that's my only, hopefully, political statement there. And then you'll see it will all match up when you get to the bottom, the whole tax levy, and then, because this is in decimals, so it's 10.42057 technically, would be the mill rate. So I just wanted people to kind of understand where some of that comes from. This is kind of a year back, our percent change in school aid. This is right off the DPI website. If it's something you're curious about, the DPI finance page has a lot of maps, tutorials, all kinds of things. So this is from 1920 to 2021, we had an increase in state aid. This year, when they update, this will increase again. One of the things, if you remember back to when I started in 2018, we had a big jump in our levy, we had a big jump in our tax burden on the district. And part of that was trying to help maximize our state aid, but we knew it takes 3 years, again, back to that chart with the 3-year rolling average, before we can fully get the state aid impact of the expenditures that we're doing. The revenue limit, that's what I talked about, that's that 4.6 million. It's our enrollment count times the per pupil revenue limit, which is set, and that gives us a total revenue limit for the district. This, and it's a little bit hard to read because it goes way back, but this is again a chart off the DPI website, talks about our longitudinal survey of membership. So if you look over the years, there was a time when we had over 1,000 students back in the 90s, early 90s. Right now we've had kind of some slight decline. And again, this doesn't account for open enrollment at all. This is just who lives in our district, kind of regardless of where they go to school, as long as they're open enrolled. If they are either private school attending or homeschool attending, then they don't count anywhere. This is kind of the survey of equalized tax rate. So the blue is CADOT, the red is the state average. And you'll see, kind of back to the painful year of 2018, that's when we jumped. It was a 12.89 mill rate. We've dropped every year since then. This year we have a more significant drop. So what we're proposing is 10.42, which isn't on here. That would be, as a reference, this one was 11, so it'd be just a little bit below that. So you can see that we're getting closer to that state average as we are able to, again, have that 3-year rolling average and recoup some of the state aid, as well as we do have some gradually increasing enrollment if you go back to the sheet just from year to year. We do a lot of work around grants, trying to have additional financial support. Educator Effectiveness has some funds that help pay for our mentor program for teachers. We have some grants for social emotional supports for students with disabilities. It's called the School Climate Transformation Screening. Again, it's all around how do we help students find the services that they need so that they can focus on their academics. CTE, Career Technical Education Incentive Grants. Those have to do with how many students are in youth apprenticeships or earn certifications in work-based learning type programs. We get some funds per child for that. Research to Practice Inclusive Communities Grant. That's really something we were eligible for because of the performance of our students with disabilities and students of lower economic status, to try to have some research-based strategies to improve their performance and academic performance and have them included in classrooms. Local business partners, Ron's still working on the signage, but as an example, we have local business partners that supported the scoreboards in the gym, that supported the addition to the kind of announcer stand for the football field, as well as others. We also have people that will support even for lunch funds and other items that we have. Lions Club and FFA alumni also have done a lot of things to support the district. Just again, to kind of go back, give you a little more specific mill rate trend. So 2018 was 12.87, that was the highest. We've gone down every year. This year is a more significant decrease. Again, it helps that we kind of got over that hump of the 3-year. It also helps that we are careful with spending things that are aided. And I can talk about that a little bit in a minute. One of the things that's always confusing, and there is no way to make it not confusing, is the budget doesn't align with the school year. So we are having our annual meeting tonight to vote on a tax levy for expenses that we started July 1. But what happens is, you'll see on here, we don't get this state aid certification until October 13th, or October 15th. That's when we know what our state aid is, and our levy is what's the difference between state aid and the revenue limit. So there are districts that try to guess and go earlier, but we found even this year when we had our best guess, we were off and had to go back and kind of last minute change some of our documents because we got a little more state aid than we were thinking. So in the spring, we start our budget planning. We look at health insurance. We have the audit of the prior year. And then we have the budget hearing. We set the levy. And then actually at the end of the year, around December, January, the audit for the prior school year is reported to the school board. Some challenges that we have, I talked about special education costs. Right now, Sue talked about that. Fund 27 is a zero balance because we have to transfer in anything that has to balance. Those needs have to be met. So right now, 1.2 million goes from Fund 10 to Fund 27 to cover those costs. That's something that we need to do. It's been a challenge, but I would say we're making a lot of progress, gaining on capital improvement projects while keeping an adequate contingency. When I started, we felt like we needed a bigger contingency for maintenance just in case something happened. And we've been able to kind of tick off some of those projects, so we don't need that huge, as large of amount there anymore. Building fund balance while it's an unaided cost. So I talked about state aid support. Any money we put in fund balance, we don't get state aid on. So we don't want to necessarily dump a whole bunch of money in there because that doesn't always help us in the long run. And you'll see every year our goal is to keep adding to it so that we don't have to do any short-term borrowing for payroll until we're getting closer to that every year. And as I talked about, school budget calendars just make it difficult to plan. And the revenue comes at varied times, so it isn't like a monthly, you get different chunks at different times, and actually in July, you get your money for June of the prior year. That's why we sometimes need to be able to cash flow depending on when that revenue comes in. Good news, Al talked about quite a bit of it. We were able to put funding into Fund 46 for capital improvements. That's currently a little over $2 million. The fund balance, I mentioned that. We did put $84,295 into that to increase that. We're trying to just slowly over time bump that up. It's been mentioned we refinanced our long-term debt for a savings of $177,000 over the life of that loan. OPEB retirement liability, and people don't always think about this. If those of you that remember the Enron days, that's when that law changed, and you had to make sure that you had funding in place for any retirement that was available for people. Not all districts are fully funded. We are fortunate that we are. So that's not an ongoing expense. That money just has to sit and be there for the needs that happen as people retire. We have a strategic planning process. We just, in this fall, approved a new 5-year strategic plan. Al mentioned we're seeking proposals on a 25-year facility plan. We want to be progressive. We want to think long-term so that we don't start to do little projects here and there, but then shoot ourselves in the foot later because we missed something big that should come together. We've been invited to share our story at the Student National Education Conference. This year that's a virtual conference, but that's something that hasn't happened for the district before. So those are good news items. As Sue said, the levy recommendation is on there. The levy is reduced $316,155 from the prior year. And I went back, if you look in the book back to 2009, it has never been reduced from one year to the next until now. And the real rate reduced from 12.01. The one piece I will explain is some of what helps reduce the levy, and maybe I'll just show you a little bit in the book quickly, is your property value. So it doesn't necessarily mean the levy went down this much, so then my taxes go down. It will depend on what's your property value. So this is the mill rate chart. Here you'll see the equalized property values over the years. So for 2019 it was $391,486,000. This year it's up to $417 million. My glasses, $140,000. So the good news is that rate on your property value is going to be quite a bit lower than it's ever been, but it will depend on what is your property value and if that's increased. That's combination, and then within your municipality is sort of what figures that out. And then here you can kind of see by municipality what percent that is of our total budget, because some municipalities don't have a lot of area that's within our district. I just want to talk a minute about the 5-year strategic plan. We had an in-person event on May 18th. We had online input. The school board approved it on September 13th. And I'm not going to read all of the goals under each of them, but you have a copy that you were able to grab as you came in. But these are our areas. Student learning and achievement. Currently we meet expectations on the DPI school report card. We want to exceed those expectations within 5 years. Student social and emotional growth. This is something we kind of broke out as we talk about student mental health and how do we best address that so that kids are able to learn. Staff engagement. We have had a lot of improvement in retention of staff. How do we even increase that more and help people feel like they belong here? Community engagement. Sue had mentioned possibly one of the things in here is having maybe some community courses. So we'll be doing a survey to say what is something that people might want to learn about in an evening and a weekend. That's what that Fund 80 Community Service Fund, part of what that could be used for. We haven't done a lot of that. That's why there's a little bit built up there, but we want to have an opportunity to reach out. But we want to know, what are people interested in? We don't want to go through a lot of planning and if it's something people aren't wanting to do. And finally, if enhancing facilities, maximizing resources. So you'll see number 1 is maximizing the state aid to reduce the mill rate, facility improvement plans, and student enrollment. So we're working on all of those as we go forward. The last piece on the last sheet of your budget book, we received some federal funds for COVID-19. I want to make sure that I say the right amount. So sometimes people will call them COVID money, ESSER money, and there's a couple of rounds. Round 2, just as a ballpark, we will receive, it's over 2 years, about $482,000. And one of the things that we need to do is get input from our staff, which we've asked for in the community, on what are priorities. There are some things we have to do. 20% of it has to be set aside for any student interventions around COVID and any academic needs that we have for that. But you can look at summer school opportunities, after school, improving ventilation, airflow, all of these things. Maybe you have something else. So kind of, if you would, before you leave, just prioritize if you have a couple of those that you think are really important, or there's room for a comment. Maybe there's something else. There are some limits because it's federal money. We can't use it for just anything, but it's broader than most. So I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to get some input on that. Any questions? Yeah, Rick?
The transportation budget, we don't see any numbers anywhere for transportation.
That would be in purchase services. And in here, things are kind of in broad categories, just so that if we have to move things, we don't have to always go through a new approval. And I don't know if you have a ballpark, Sue, but because that's, like Hobusson is a vendor that we purchase services from. So it would be a part of that, but it also does include, if we, for example, we had professional development this fall, that people come in, any vendors, that's where that's budgeted.
And if you look on the first page of the budget, support services function 200,000 is where all of that transportation would be. I would estimate about $700,000 was budgeted for transportation.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, Kathy?
You said that you get a refinance for the elementary school with our long-term debt.
Yes.
How much is that balance? What is the debt on that school?
If you look in the book on page bottom of page 4, our current, as of June 30th, 2021, the principal balance was $9,112,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Is that all from the school, or is there the 1.26 above that from something else?
The 1.26 above is that portion of that debt that could not be refinanced. So both items on here are elementary debt.
Any other questions?
What was the reason that couldn't be refinanced?
The bonds were not callable.
And that was part of the stipulation, we couldn't bond out, correct?
Right.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
All right, so we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the budget as
Is that paying more?
No.
Just for the minutes. Motion by Ron?
Yes.
Rick.
Rick, sorry. Can I get a second? second by Shar. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Need a motion for the treasurer's report, or a motion to dispense with the reading of the treasurer's report.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Kathy, second by Shar.
What's the motion for? The census?
Yeah. Kathy, do you want to dispense of the reading?
Yes.
Motion is to dispense of the treasurer's report. Motion by Kathy, second by Shar. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. On to number 11. Need a motion for authorization of the school tax levy.
I make a motion for the tax levy.
Motion by Shar,
Second it.
second by Rick.
Randy.
Randy. Sorry, I'll get it right, yeah.
You make him take it next year. You need his last name too.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Randy, what's your last name?
Detloff. Dettlooff, like in Frank. You're welcome.
All right, number 12. Need a motion for Board of Education salaries. I guess this is what we're currently making. We're not looking to make any changes there, basically just keeping the same.
I make a motion for it to stay the same.
How long has these numbers been the same?
It's been a lot of years. I mean, it's
More than
been
4
several
years.
I'd like to make a motion of 2% increase on all of them. It's not much, but they do do a lot. In the last 2 years, we had a lot going on.
I was gonna say,
You want to take your motion back?
No, I'm gonna leave it on there.
so you wanna see if you can get a second for Rick's motion first?
Yeah. We get a second for Rick's motion of just keeping them the same.
Second.
Second by Kathy. So we'll vote on that one, and then we do Shar. All in favor of keeping our salaries, Board of Education salaries the same?
Who's gonna count?
Yeah. Karita, you count?
Yeah, thank you.
So you got Char's motion,
Okay. And can we get a second on Shar's motion to raise the salaries by 2%? Okay, so no second, so that's, motion carries with keeping the salaries the same. Next one is, motion, can I do all these together or one at a time?
we have to do separately.
Okay. Need a motion to authorize temporary borrowing for operations and maintenance.
I make that motion.
Motion by Shar,
I'll second it.
second by Kathy.
I got a question.
Okay, discussion?
So, how much money do we need in one of those funds to not have temporary borrow? Isn't that one of our goals, is to not have to borrow?
Yeah, that's why we keep adding to
How
fund
far
balance.
off are we? How much are we temporary borrowing every year at this point?
Last year, I had to borrow $1 million, and I had borrowed that already by the middle of October. This year, I'm projecting that I won't have to borrow until the 1st of November, and I'm down to $500,000. So we're getting really close. And then when tax money is paid in January, that's
Paid out.
paid.
So Fund 46, we don't temporary borrow, only
Oh,
Fund.
no,
Okay.
you can't in Fund 10, your general fund is the only thing you can borrow in.
And what's our Fund 10 right now?
Right now, our fund balance is 1.857 million.
Would you project that next year we'd probably be there?
Next year, we'll probably be back there.
It depends a little bit as salaries increase, like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
depends on the expenses, but,
I think it's kind of important to have flexibility for the administration to pay these bills, because we don't, there's a lot of unknowns when when those bills are coming and when our revenue is coming in too. And that's the big X factor of, we all like not to borrow, but however, sometimes we have to for a short time. How much did we spend on interest last year? Is there anything that you,
I don't know off the top of my head, no.
I don't think it's a lot, was it?
No, well,
I can't say, yeah.
I without looking up, I can't tell you.
You said it would just be from October, November until January on a large sum like that.
Okay, can we get a vote on authorizing temporary borrowing? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Need a motion for authorized legal defense and prosecution as required.
Make the motion.
Motion by Kathy,
Second?
second by Chrissy. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Authorization to furnish textbooks and periodicals.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Becca, second by Donna. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Last one, need a motion for the operation of the food service department and establish lunch prices.
I'll make that motion. Food service department.
Motion by Shar,
A second?
second by Chrissy. Do we know?
Our thought is we would keep those the same, and actually for this school year, all of this school year, and, I don't know, part of last school year, through USDA, lunch has been free for all students, and so we haven't had that issue, so it's our thought, we don't feel like we need to do an increase at this time.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Last item on here is establish the date for next year's annual meeting.
I make a motion for the 17th of October.
Let me give you guys enough time to do all your stuff.
On the 15th, we get our certified city. The only tricky part about next year is that's a Saturday. If we could do the meeting on the 24th, that gives us a little better window because, and it's just how next year works, there's actually 5 Mondays. We have to have the levy certified before November 1st to get in, so like we feel like that would give us enough time to get that done, but,
I'll amend it to the 24th.
okay.
I'd second it.
Okay. Motion by Rick, second by Randy. You right?
Yeah, you're right.
To make the meeting on October 24th, 7 o'clock. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Last item on there is we need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Rick,
Second it.
second by Randy. All in favor? Any opposed? And we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks for anything, Sue.
Thank you, guys.